This lesson kicks off our fiction narrative unit, yay, so much fun, by looking at plot in all of its elements. To start with, in this lesson, the lesson objectives are that by the end of the lesson, you will be able to define plot, list and define all the elements of plot, explain the role of tension in a story, and explain how plot is like a roller coaster in terms of helping to build tension. Your keywords are plot, tension, exposition, inciting incident, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. So to start, plot is simply all the events that happen in a story. It's the beginning, the middle, and the end, and it will tie directly to theme and conflict, both of which we're going to talk about in another lesson. They'll each get their own. So, for right now, you need to know that plot are all the events that happen in the story. That's it, folks. All the events that happen in the story. Writing exciting stories means that we have to have tension in our stories. Tension is built by how you arrange your events. If you give too much information too fast or too slow, it will make your story boring. So, we use plot to reveal certain types of information at certain points in time to build our tension and make our stories interesting and exciting. Tension is simply the sense of excitement and or anticipation that keeps a reader hooked and reading. So, the beginning of our plot has one job. It's to introduce us to the characters, the setting, and the conflict that's going to make up the rest of the story. This is done in two parts. The first is the exposition. This is the part of the story where you introduce the setting and the main character just enough so that the reader knows where they are, who they're dealing with. In terms of exciting, it's a little bit like hopping on a roller coaster where you're sitting inside that car looking at the track ahead of you. You can see the rise. You might even be able to see the very top or a hint of the drop, but you can't see all the loops and turns. You know that in general this is going to be exciting and thrilling, but you don't know exactly how this is going to work out yet. By the time your reader leaves this portion of the story, the exposition, they should know where they are, the setting, who the main character is, and have an idea of how the main character's upcoming ordeal might challenge their main weakness. So we should have a hint at some weakness or fear or character flaw that this character is going to end up having to overcome through whatever challenges the conflict throws at them. This moves us into the inciting incident. This is the event that ends the beginning and throws the character into conflict. It's brief, it's impactful, and it launches the tension in the story. This is the part of the roller coaster ride where the cars start to move forward. To review the vocabulary from this section, exposition is the beginning part of the story that introduces setting and the main character. It foreshadows the trial the character will have to face in the story to come. Inciting incident is the event that throws the main character into conflict and kicks off the events and the tension of the story. The middle portion of the story slowly builds the tension to its peak or turning point. Here, we get to know our characters and our environment more, and we watch them struggle to overcome the conflict. This is done through rising action, which is actually the bulk of the story. All of the challenges that lead up to the turning point make up our rising action. It's like that first really big climb on the roller coaster where you go up and up and up and see how far away from the ground you get, and you know that your risk is getting bigger and bigger. In this section, your character is going to have challenge after challenge after challenge to overcome, and they won't always win. In fact, they're probably losing more often than they're winning, because the longer the story continues, the more the main character has to lose at the end. So to recap, rising action are all the events that happen after the inciting incident that lead up to the climax, and they build tension by making the character face trials that he or she may not be able to successfully come through. Those failures build tension. The next part of the middle is our turning point. This is the top, the first rise of the roller coaster where you're up super, super, super high, and then you drop, okay? Right in the middle. But we're sitting right here at the top, that pause before the drop. You've got the most to lose, and this makes it the most exciting. So, this is what's true of the turning point. Because your character has the most to lose, and they're really struggling to overcome the conflict. We see this, we call it the climax. This is the turning point, and in this scene, there's some major confrontation with the conflict that by the end of it, everything appears lost and hopeless. This is also the scene, though, where the main character learns what it's going to take for him to win the war. So that's how the story moves forward. The battle goes majorly wrong, everything seems lost, which gives us captivating attention. And figuring out how to continue from there, but not telling the reader, is what's going to keep that tension going through the rest of the story. So your vocabulary here is obviously climax. It is the turning part of the story and the peak of the tension where, for a moment, everything seems lost for the hero. And that momentum will drive us right on to the end, where we do the downhill ride and coast into the roller coaster station. Everything here is going to happen so quickly that it will keep your reader snared until the very smooth ending, which has two components. To begin with, falling action. This is where we watch the main character's plan unfold as she heads, or he heads, towards their final confrontation with the conflict. Events will happen quickly, but they finally turn towards a victory for your hero. That they happen so quickly is part of what maintains your tension, because it's going, going, going. This time, though, your hero should start to win. And that will lead us to the resolution. Your war is won, your hero is victorious, and all of the reader's questions are answered. This is true even if you are writing a series, because if it's the first book in a series, you've got two plots that you're dealing with. The plot in the story you're writing right now, and the plot overall. Think Harry Potter. In the very first book, we are introduced to the conflict between Harry and Lord Voldemort. And Harry has to find the Sorcerer's Stone to keep Voldemort from coming back to life. That's the conflict of book one. But overall out there is still the conflict of Voldemort still existing in general. At the end of the first book, we know what Harry has done to prevent Voldemort's return for that book. Same thing with your stories. This should be a resolving of the conflict of this story. This problem should be fixed. Do not have a to be continued story. This is not television. It's not how that works. And of course, we have vocabulary from here. Falling action, all the events that are after the climax but before the resolution. This starts to put the hero back on the right track and leads to his or her victory. Maintains tension through a fast-paced nature. The resolution finally lets us off the hook with the tension. It's the final scenes of the story where loose ends are wrapped up and the problem of the conflict is solved. And that's plot in a nutshell.